everyone. Once again, welcome you all. If you have not met me yet, I haven't gotten a chance to shake hands with you. I'm Ruchi. I lead the recruitment here at Hitech Advisors, and I'd like to invite our COO, Lan Wang, so he can give you more information about Hitech Advisors and we can get rolling with the agenda.
Thank you, Ruchi. Thanks to the team who actually put this event all together. And thank you all for coming to this event. This is actually the latest episode of this AI series that Hitech Advisor puts on with the support from JP Morgan Private Bankers. For those who I have not the pleasure to meet yet, my name is Lam Wang, and I joined Haresh and the Hitech Advisor team last year to further advance the core practices and also international presence for Hitech Advisors. So many of you know that Haresh actually started the Hitech Advisor about 9 years ago, and the team and Haresh have done tremendous job at gaining marquee names that you see on some of the slides in the U.S. One of my goals and one of my charter for joining Hitech Advisor is actually to strengthen our AI and customer experience practice, as well as taking the company's expertise and excellent service internationally. So it has been a great episode so far, right? So we've over the last 6 months or so have expanded our customer base to include cross-border commerce companies. We are doing strategy consulting and some of the management consulting, and we're about to sign our latest client, which is a neo cloud for AI workload. So we're advising them on expanding globally, right, into Europe, into Middle East. At Hitech Advisor, we actually pride ourselves in a simple approach, right, which is we lead every engagement with empathy and competency, and hopefully through those two, through repeated engagement, we get to build trust over a long time. So many of you in the audience have been associated with Hitech Advisors in multiple capacities for many years. So glad to see many of the familiar faces here. And for those who are new to Hitech Advisors, we hope to start our business relationship, get to know each other on a more personal level through events like these. So we are the expert at engaging experts, and we pride ourselves in finding meaningful business problems for those who find them meaningful to solve. So without further ado, let me bring up David.
Hey everyone, I'm David Kerban. I'm with JP Morgan. Just want to thank Haresh. This has been a great event that we've hosted for quite some time. Kind of feels like I know a lot more people in the room now than I did 3 years ago, and it's lovely to have a nice event, nice food. I'm here. I feel like, us as a firm, we are in the ecosystem of innovation economy, and just want to be a resource to everyone in the room. Whether that's a startup, whether that's helping you out with your personal things, always here as someone that you can have an idea with. But really just love this event, and it's so fun to be, growing relationships. And I feel like hosting a little powwow over there earlier was like amazing. Like, this is like my buddies. So it's great to see everyone. And then Haresh, thank you. Great vision.
Oh, thank you, David.
No bad. I'm seeing for the rest of the night.
We kind of started this on a whim about 3 years ago. So now it's been a long whim. So I think we had a colleague, a former colleague, right? Dina, who was in the Seattle office of JP Morgan, and then at another event, we had thought of basically that people would be interested in AI. Maybe we would have an event or two. And then now here we are. I think this is the 11th or the 12th event. So thank you, David. JP Morgan has been a very, very nice partner and very supportive of this effort. So, but before we get into the main panel, we have a little bit of a bonus for you all. And where's my bonus? So Ron Selinsky is with a company called IQ Rush. They've been a client of ours for a while, but I'm not going to steal all the thunder. But it's a surprise AI company, and let me see if I can find you a PowerPoint. So you can feel free to introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay, we're good to go. All right. So yeah, I'm Ron Selinsky. I've been a long time technology veteran. I started at Microsoft back in 1999. I spent like 22 years there, which is a very long time for anyone. I spent some time at Oracle as well. Most of my career has been spent in the analytics, data science, AI space, right? Which is one of the reasons that I'm here tonight. Now, do we have a remote? No, okay, so yeah. I'll go. Great. All right. So, where to begin? Right. So, I think the topic of conversation tonight is largely about what's next, right? And certainly a few years ago when ChatGPT was first introduced, people were asking themselves that same question. What's next? And certainly, AI seemed like it could be the next big thing, but people weren't really sure. Is it real, or is it like maybe some sort of next generation Eliza? Certainly, by now we know the answer to that question. The challenging thing is it's moving so fast that a lot of companies are left wondering how it is that they respond. More specifically, a lot of them are wondering, like, how is it that I control the narrative when an AI is doing most of the talking? And that's the goal. That's the challenge that IQ Rush is trying to address, right? That we're trying to help brands answer that question, help them to optimize and monetize AI search. All right, so AI search truly is sort of a strategic concern for a lot of companies. NetRush, as an example, is a retail agency. They help consumer brands manage their presence in online marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart, TikTok, etc. And here you have their head of strategy expressing frustration over the differences between answer engine optimization, AEO, what we have today, and historic search engine optimization, SEO. Right? And certainly back in the day when Google was the only game in town, there were some very clear-cut strategies for how it is that you increased your AI visibility. Right? You can increase the number of backlinks. You can enhance your metadata tags. There are a variety of strategies. Worst case, if you could simply buy the right keywords and elevate yourself to the top of Google's search results. Answer engines don't work that way. They're much more complicated beasts. The same strategies, as you see here, simply do not work. Moreover, the stakes are much, much higher, right? With traditional search, you had this near infinite list of links that you could pursue. At some point, your company would show up, right? With answer engines, that's not the case anymore. At most, a response is probably going to contain about a dozen citations, dozen references to grounding sources that they're using. And very probably, they're going to mention an even fewer number of brands. So how is it you become one of those citation sources? How is it that you become one of those brands that are mentioned. And that's fundamentally the problem that we're solving. And that's why NetRush has and IQRush just yesterday announced a strategic partnership. We've been working with them for several months now. They know what our platform is capable of doing, and they believe that it's the best platform to help their clientele measure, manage, and monetize their AI search, their AI visibility. Now, certainly NetRush had a lot of companies that they could have chosen to work with, right? No doubt there are probably over 100 companies now that are trying to address problems like this. Most of them, however, are simply measurement tools, right? So the way that works is they're generally sending maybe a handful of questions to answer engines, and in some cases as few as 25 questions to the answer engines. And however many times your brand shows up or your URLs were cited, that's your score. Now, the problem with that is that it doesn't take into consideration the inherent variability of answer engines, right? The way that they work is you could ask the same question twice and you're going to get two different answers, right? So if I have a measurement platform that's doing something very similar to that, you could get a score and then ask it to refresh that score, and you're going to get two different numbers. Now for me that reminds me very much of Siegel's law, which says that if a man has a watch, he knows what time it is. If he has two watches, he's never quite sure. Right? So that's the problem with platforms that aren't taking into consideration that inherent variability. So of course we don't go about it that way. We go about it very differently. We start with the same seed. We're going to send a series of questions to the answer engines, but it's not going to be 25. It's going to be hundreds, perhaps thousands of questions. And then we're going to do the necessary math to separate the signal from noise so that we can actually quantify the uncertainty in the score that we present. So brands can know exactly how reliable that number is. More importantly, we're not just looking back on the results that you just received. We're also able to look forward, right? As the slide suggests here, we're now able to predict with 92% accuracy what are the URLs, what are the sources that these answer engines will cite. And one of the byproducts of our research is a variety of interesting insights, the sorts of things that actually can help inform brand strategy. Right. So here's an example here where one of the things that we've observed, one of the things that we've quantified is the extent to which these answer engines actually behave differently from each other. Right. So if you take a look at the URLs, the sources that the answer engines are citing, you'll find that there's only a 15% overlap between SearchGPT and Perplexity. That means that 85% of the sources are different. Right. So there's 3% overlap between Perplexity and Gemini. Again, that's a 97% difference. That's huge. Right. So the key takeaway for brands is that if you want to be a top-sided brand across all of these answer engines, it's going to be very, very difficult. That's going to force you to make some prioritization decisions. Now, the underlying reason, of course, for these differences is that these answer engines are very complicated systems, right? They're not just LLMs. Each of them has its own architectures, and that leads to these profound differences in behaviors. The good news is we don't have to reverse engineer these systems to understand how they work. We're taking a data science-driven approach to figuring out how they work. Everything that we do is based upon the scenarios that I've described. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Actually, why don't I pop ahead in the interest of the time? This slide illustrates the basic process that we go through with each of our brands. We start with the brand showing up. They all they really need to give us is the URL. It's helpful if they give us more information, the markets that they're focused on, who their competitors are, and from that we build that set of questions that we're going to send to the answer engines. Now again, that might be hundreds of questions, very probably might be thousands of questions. We'll send those to each of the answer engines. We'll collect their responses. We'll see what are the sites that are being referenced? What are the brands that are getting mentioned? And then we'll actually go off too further, and we'll scrape the URLs for every site that was referenced by those engines. We'll go down to the sentence level to understand what it is that those sites are saying and how does it relate to what the answer engines are saying. So that's one of the things that certainly makes all of this very powerful. And from that, we're actually able to create a set of recommendations for brands, suggesting to them how it is that they can increase their own AI visibility. So, and here's where that predictive capability comes into play. Now, based upon the content that they're considering, we allow them to experiment with that, and we can tell them ahead of time how likely is it that this will increase their AI visibility. Will it make a measurable difference? And then once they choose to go ahead and publish that, their enhanced content, we can actually show them in practical terms, did it make a difference? And then further downstream, we can connect that into more practical terms for them. Did that result in more traffic and more revenue? Yes. Sure. So,
Sorry, just like, how can we help you? Right?
Yeah.
If you can get there, because I want to make sure we have enough time.
Oh, absolutely.
So go ahead.
We're almost
Okay, perfect.
But the key answer to that is money. All right, so I will say that just quickly that search engine optimization, traditional search, it is proven that it's important for brands to curate their online presence, right? And with AEO, that's going to be even more true. This market has gone from a $0 industry to an $8 billion industry just in the past couple of years. And as you can see, the expectation is that it's going to increase to exponentially in the next few years. All right, so everything that I've been talking about, everything that I've described, kind of puts us where we are today. Right now, IQ Rush is a company. We generate about $450,000 in annual recurring revenue, and we've largely done that on the backs of our own wallets, right? So, and a few investors. So, what we're looking for right now, the ask, is we're trying to raise a $2 million seed money to get us an 18-month runway to actually expand everything that we've done, right? So most of what we do today is built on the earliest of prototypes that we've developed. So we need to get beyond that, so that we can actually onboard more brands and help them to be successful. So here's a quick look at the leadership team. I won't linger here, but I'll pause at that with that and open it up to questions or concerns. Yes, please.
I'm signing up customers right now.
So the question is, are we signing up customers right now? And yes, we are. To be clear, the goal with the seed money that we're trying to raise is to make it possible for us to scale out so that it's a much more of a self-service platform. Right now, we're working with customers in much more of a white glove scenario, right? So we ask, they'll work directly with us. We'll generate the results and share that with them on a one-on-one basis.
Okay. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's side. And thanks again, Haresh, for the opportunity.
So if anybody, you'll be here for a while,
We've
right?
here all night, yeah.
Yeah, so if anybody's interested to follow up with any questions or interest.
Appreciate it again. Thank you.
Is your contact somewhere?
Well, we got IQRush.ai. I'm Ron at IQRush.ai.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
So now I'll ask the speakers to come out for the main panel. Thanks, Ron, by the way, for standing in. He didn't know he was going to do this till very shortly before now. So, all right. So, oh, yes, here. So we'll get into the main part of the panel in a second. I have a question for everybody. LLMs. How many of you had heard of LLMs before 2022? And how much time do you spend now hearing about LLMs? I'm sorry? That's too much. So, because of that, we're going to have, before the rest of the panel discussion, we're going to get a little bit of a tutorial from a very capable up-and-coming professional in AI domain, Mayan. So he actually was kind enough to put a few slides together for us to give us some context of what LLMs are and what's there in AI besides LLMs, right? So that'll hopefully serve as a context for the panel discussion a little bit later. It'll only take just a few minutes. So if you want to come by, Mayan, feel free to. By the way, this is Mayan Sudarshanan. So maybe take a minute to introduce yourself a little bit before while I set up the PowerPoint for you.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm a machine learning engineer at a startup company called Hyper-B AI. And in May of last year, I graduated with my master's in computer engineering from Washington University in St. Louis. And actually, I work out of the Hitech office. My work is remote, but Haresh was kind enough to offer me space. And I guess the goal with the presentation today is, yes, a tutorial, but also to share some thoughts from an engineer's perspective on what's coming up next and how things should be tackled coming up next in AI. So I'll talk a little bit about the current generative AI solutions, both in the language context and then the vision context, and then where the future of AI is going in terms of what type of models. And then I'll also talk about the landscape overall. What are the challenges and where does the industry focus lie? And then also where I think the industry focus should lie. Okay, so I want to start by explaining my fundamental principle here of AI. AI should serve as an augmentation of human capabilities. So, whether it be a simulation of a human behavior or extending a human task, I think there are three core elements of AI and a good generative AI model. That's perception, idealization, and then replication. So with those three elements in mind, we'll start by talking about something that we want to tune out, LLMs. So, this is going to be a very high level overview, but I do want to go over, just the inner workings a little bit here. So, as the name suggests, alphanumeric characters are processed and divided into subwords, which are known as tokens. Those subwords can often be keywords or phrases, and essentially those tokens serve as part of the retrieval process. So after the user has an input, there's then a retrieval process which searches the cache of the model and finds an appropriate response to send to the attention mechanism, which is where generation happens. After generation, the answer that's outputted is validated based on accuracy metrics and then also the relevance to the original prompt. Now, through that, there is a feedback loop. So if it doesn't meet that criteria, that prompt is reprompted in a different way, slightly different writing, and requeried. And then this is an iterative feedback loop. And then finally, once those criteria are met for accuracy and relevance, there's an LLM response. Now, the vision context is kind of similar, except now we have an image encoder. So the image is tokenized, not like subwords, but instead patches of the image. So tiny squares of an individual image, and essentially, that's an entire different encoder on top of the image encoder. But on top of that, there is multimodal fusion, which is the fusing of textual and visual elements together. And this is really critical for, matching the semantics of the text with the actual meaning of the image. And because of these additional elements, these vision models, yes, they're, more capable and they're, highly applicable. The problem is that they have a large memory footprint as a result of these additional elements. And I'll talk a little bit more later about the challenges of that. Okay, so now where we're going into the future of, these generative AI models. First, there's the action model, which has the capability to understand an image, and, perceive the image within the context of where that image is, and generate an action accordingly. But it can't predict the future. In other words, it doesn't jump out of the context of the image. Now, then there's the world model, which can perceive the image, and perceive an action and actually predict the future, but it can't generate the action. But the next big thing, and that's been in development by many firms, is action world models, which combine the capabilities of both the action models, the world models, and you can act within a virtual entity, and have actionable items within it. Now, as I had alluded to earlier, there are some challenges with the existing innovations and the existing focus of model builders. So big data in terms of the images and the text associated with it, and extensive training time are big hurdles for other players to step into the model building space. And you need vast amounts of computing resources for that. Now, many of the production models that we utilize are often deployed in cloud situations. So this raises significant security concerns depending on what type of information is being shared, latency issues depending on how real-time dependency for the use cases, and then expensive maintenance, which is the cost of accessing a cloud model. State-of-the-art models rarely depend on affordable edge hardware. They're not designed to tackle, or they're not designed to be hosted on those edge hardware. That's where the industry focus is, making highly capable but also highly resource intensive models. And they really cater to the deep-pocketed entities that actually make the models, but also have access to the data and the resources as a result. Now, I ask the question, how can capable models be accessed cheaply and securely? The only way is developing capable hardware-aware AI models for the edge, which is what I'm doing, but also where I really want the industry to go. Developing on-site solutions, developing models that are hardware-aware, that are really powerful, but they can fit on they have a smaller memory footprint and can fit on more affordable hardware. I guess we'll take questions now, or yeah. You have an example then, the last one. Okay, so for example, you have a model that's just as powerful as ChatGPT, for example. Let's say you want to fit that on a drone, right? That's currently not possible without a very expensive GPU. Similarly, in Teslas right now, the modern Tesla, the latest update of Tesla self-driving comes with really expensive GPUs. And that's not feasible for other manufacturers to compete with that, and also for the overall, competition in the field. It's not very feasible. So
what's the solution, right? Which direction?
So right now, the current solutions are tending towards that highly capable yet still resource intensive route. However, if we want to spread the models to devices like drones, and more affordably spread it to devices on cars, for example, we need to build the industry needs to pivot towards building models that are hardware aware. They can fit on smaller devices at a more affordable price point. So
The leaks so into the all kindliness we better that SP's idea. So we limited capabilities, limited and you still need capital, right? So the GPU.
not necessarily. So if you design a model from hardware aware model from the ground up, right, understanding the limitations of what you're working on, right, and understanding the existing architectures are vast. If you start from an architectural standpoint of from the model side, there are certain advantages for certain architectures of models over others, and those models should be the focus. Those smaller footprint architectures.
Sorry. Can you come back? Oh, I'm sorry. So let's. I'm sorry. Speakers, please come back. Mayan, thank you. So hopefully we'll have some context to discuss. All right.
Yes, so was your salary bill? Just wanted to see about it with an annual, but I think the answer is going back to that action and world model and the payment. Yeah, answer probably lies in that action and world model you were talking about earlier, right? So you could have much lighter weight action models that can do the understanding pieces, right? It's the prediction pieces which you'd require a world model or an additional larger model on, and that you could limit the surface area for which your model would be much lighter, right? So I think Linux was a good analogy over there. Like the Linux on a sensor is not the full Linux that runs on, say, a server that's on the cloud, right? Yes, it has the same core capabilities, right? And model needs to evolve towards that. There are certain aspects that are there today in the industry, but is it mature? No, right? And is it universal that we can all access? Probably not. And I think that's what Man was referring to.
Right. So. Yeah, and there's not a widely accepted architecture from a model building perspective that's been proven over time.
So
Talk to Len.
I would like to add the one thought on this, like whereas that there is a limitation on hosting the model on the compute or sensors, but right now the one of the architecture most of the device manufacturer adopting process in cloud, capture on the device, process in cloud. Ring bell can from Amazon can detect there is a package on the front door. But to recognize that through the vision, they process on the on the cloud for now. But this is a valid question: how we bring those models in a cheaper way on the devices itself.
So while you have the microphone on, Sharad, go ahead. Yeah. But let's do quick intros. So Sharad, just tell us a little bit about your journey and what you're doing now, and then we'll follow up with some more questions.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thank you for inviting me here. And I really like the panel and everyone. I was having a chat with folks, while having some snacks. Thank you for organizing this event as well to Hitech. Myself, I'm Sharad. Been in computer industry for 25 years. Been in Microsoft for 15 years and multiple places. Last thing I did with Microsoft was Microsoft Teams. I am one of the founding member of Teams. And after that, I got opportunity to work at AWS. I was with AWS for 6 years, where I led the Amazon Connect as a contact center in cloud. There also, I got opportunity to get my hands on AI to in the customer support scenario, like building an IVR, building a conversational AI for the voice agents and for the digital channels. And recently, a few months back, I joined back Microsoft again as a boomerang. Came back from this side of the bridge. I was going that side of the bridge. So now I am part of Agent 365 and Agentic Data Platform. So that has been my journey.
Awesome. Thank you. Very quick question. Which one's cushier? Which one is cushier between Microsoft and Amazon? You don't have to. You can take the fifth if you want. Jigar, go ahead.
Yep. Hey, thank you, Haresh Bhai, again, and Hitech for inviting us here. I'm Jigar. It's interesting. Actually, in this forum, I have folks who have worked with me in different aspects of my career. So I've had about 20 plus years or 25 years now and counting in AI, right? I started as an applied researcher, grew up the ranks through applied research, had my own startup before joining Microsoft. Spent 12 years in Microsoft, did my rounds in Amazon for 4 years. I treated it as a college education, like learn what the real world is. Came out, and then, last 6 years I had been in Oracle. I am on a brief sabbatical, and I'll be starting a new gig next Monday. So, to some extent, I feel like a free bird. I'm open to share my opinions. It's my opinions and no other companies. So just wanted to talk about that. And shout out to Ron, right? He is my ex-colleague from Oracle. Great presentation. Loved how you presented a very complex area and, simplified it, right? And connected it back to SEO. Reminds me of my days in Microsoft Bing and Bing Ads, where we were doing R&R and revenue and relevance, right? And very, very similar challenges.
Thank you. And what's cushier between Oracle and Microsoft? It's okay.
And Microsoft. Oh, that's hard one. No, I think Microsoft gets down on that one.
You can also take the fifth. Tiger.
Let me answer a question first. Microsoft. Right. I'm Tiger Feng. I'm the president of the Seattle Technical Forum. I'm running all kinds of technical events across the Seattle area with our 50,000 members. At the spare time, I work for Meta as their PM. My team really working on the foundational models, not only a large language model, but other foundational models to support whole company spaces, including recommendation, search, ads, and other stuff. And before that, I worked at Microsoft a few times, as you guys. I started in 1999 on the natural language processing group, which now they call it natural language model, but at that time it's called natural language processing. Yeah, and then I also joined Google for about 7 years, and also other parts of Microsoft, and also worked at Huawei. And about 8 years ago, talking about Edge AI, my team really created and made it a mass production of first industry edge devices. This really the AI chip inside. So yeah, nice to meet you guys.
We'll start with a lighter question. What is your favorite LLM, consumer-facing LLM that are out there, each of you, and why? Tiger, go ahead.
I'm from Meta, no comment.
You're free to speak, Jigar, right?
Hey, it's the flavor of the day, right? So it depends on which LLM did the good job. Today is all Gemini, right? I actually tried their vision model. By the way, my thesis was in computer vision 25 years back. And love to see how the field has evolved, right? And I was playing with bananas and I was going bananas with that, right? A little bit with the Gemini. It's an amazingly good model. It's interesting how things change and shift, right? Like we used to measure AI evolution in 4 to 5 year cycles 25 years back. And right now, literally, it is changing almost every week, right? Where a new model comes in and new capabilities come in within a model. No offense to Tiger, right? Like at one point, we thought Llama was doing really well on code generation, right? And then Claude came out and then Gemini came out. And now, Llama is there, but, a distant third or fourth, right? So
No comments.
Yeah, but hey, I'm a free word today. So anyway, so just wanted to say, like, my favorite changes by the week or day, and that's the key thing, our theme I want everyone to take away, is I truly believe for any real application, you have to think of a world where you are model agnostic. If you are tied to a single model, you're going to be absolute very, very, very soon. So
Yeah, for me, it's obvious. It's Copilot. So on serious note, yes, like the Copilot, the way it can, connect your, the work, your whole and 365 together, you can actually live there. Like, for example, you're working on any document and you don't have to scroll through or search through your emails, your meeting notes, transcriptions, and whatnot. It is a one single place where you can combine the your search through the internal corpus of the information that you have generated by interacting with various application. But at the same time, if you really want that it should bring the research from outside as well on some topic, it can bring as well. So whereas the other providers, without taking a name, they are very specialized for something. But what I found that the Copilot is really a game changer, where especially for the information worker, for students, it really provide a value right there. Because one of the another thing is that you can find a very specialized thing in one model or one application, but when it connect everything together in a context, you are working on, that's the true value of it. I'm going back to the same thing, what Jigar just said about the application has to be model agnostic. LLM is right now is a commodity. It's very common. The industry is moving, in my opinion, from innovation to diffusion. Innovation is when you learn something first time. Diffusion is when the same thing happens millions time in a secure, scalable, and safe way. And the LLM has proved that it happened multiple times now. The the industry or the leaders should really think now from an LLM perspective how the foundation is correct, how the semantic layer is correct, the ontology is correct, so that they have a right level of eval to make sure that whatever the capability they are building are working whenever they want to switch the model. The semantic layer is so important, and before that the data schema is very important. Are we building the schema in a way that it is ready for the agents to access on a frequent basis? Because we know that the interaction of agents with the database or with your data is a different pattern than the way application access. The second thing is that the semantic layer on top of it, your business language, the translation. For example, in airline industry, your ticket or whatever you buy, your travel is recognized by PNR. Model will not understand PNR. This is that belong to semantic. Similarly, in financial industry, for example, for invoice, the key is invoice ID. Similarly, what are my top opportunity, how to calculate the top revenues and whatnot, it varies business to business, domain to domain. So that has to be built in the semantic layer, so that because the semantic layer is your proprietary, whereas the LLM is generally available everywhere. Leaders should not think that LLM should understand my business semantic automatically and should give me the right outcome. Whereas we have to make the LLM work in our favor by providing all the semantic at the right layer. Models will come, models will go, but what is not changing is your foundation and your semantic.
Okay. We'll probably come back to some of that. So 2 questions for you there. So we'll have the original one. What's your favorite LLM as a consumer? But the second one is, hopefully, maybe it'll be a mix of younger and older professionals, but hopefully the next set of younger professionals will come up with a new killer app, what will that be that'll replace the LLM? The easy question for you.
Yeah. Thanks. So to answer the first question, I actually, I'm also model agnostic. I actually use a server or an app called Olama. Now, Olama has a collection of several different models. You've got Gemini, you've got Microsoft Phi, you've got uh, Llama. And basically what I do is cycle between models month by month, use case by use case. But instead of using the base model as they are, I actually fine-tune each model that I experiment with fine-tuning models, right? Now, fine-tuning is, you can think of it as training on your own data, your own custom code, your own writing style, right? Without prompting the model. Actually, if you, compartmentalize your own coding style or your own writing style into data, right? You can actually retrain the model. And so that's what I end up doing. And I cycle between different models every month. Right now I'm using Microsoft Phi 3, fine-tuned. And yeah, that's been working well.
So may I have a few more on top of my question answer? In fact, may mention one important thing is the fine tuning. Before I come back to that, my team is really in charge of the whole evaluation of all the 1P, 2P, 3P models for the meta. So my team really did a lot of extensive and comprehensive evaluation of all the models. So one thing we notice is no significant or no outstanding winner. There's some models good at some dimensions, while others not at that or better at that other dimensions. So there's no one single winner. That's one thing. Another thing is, as I mentioned, that all the models you have to fine tune it to be used for your use case. There's no out-of-shelf model fit for all. So fine tuning really requires a lot of data. That's one thing. Capacity or expertise. So you need engineer expertise to fine tune it smartly. So thank you for you to point that out. Yeah.
All right. So I think it was touched on by Sharad and a few others, which is you have to be model agnostic, right? So I guess there's probably two audiences, or I can think of two audiences that care a lot about the future. So if you're a large enterprise and you're continuously making huge investments in all types of infrastructure, right? So ever since I started in technology in the 90s, there's this future proof, right? We've all heard this phrase. Is it possible? And like, if you were to, how do you do that as AI moves, well beyond LLMs, right? So, and I think that's something you touched on a little bit.
Yeah. So one thing I am sure that there are many IT professionals and in this room and have seen enough in industry. Like, in my opinion, when you get your data schema correct, your database architecture correct, your semantic layer correct, you can replace on the top application, you can point to the mobile application, you can build the API on top of that quickly. Whereas if you got your foundation wrong, you are left behind by multiple years. So at least as I'm seeing industry evolving, we need to continuously make sure that layer is solid. At least that is future proof. Like, models will come, different patterns will come, because the way industry is evolving, every other week, Cloud Code is producing some applications and whatnot, and agents. It's very fast evolving. But for the enterprises, that is going to be the key. Let's make sure for 2030, number one priority is to make sure your database architecture and semantic layer is solid, and you have the right level of evals built that define the behavior of your agents or the functionality, and then you are open for experimentation for the new models or new paradigms that's evolving.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Yep. No, I think Sharat covered it very well. You have to go back to the basics. You need to know where your data model is. You need to understand your business use cases and business logic and semantic. And those need to be fixed while we fully expecting the actual agent that will do the work will change or evolve over time. LLM that is used by the agent for sure will be changing. You heard from multiple people it's weekly right now. I won't be surprised if it gets to a very dynamic place where it might be changing based on the use case really, or even in the current context of semantic. You might run multiple models and pick the best one, right? So that is definitely a way to start thinking about a little bit of future proofing, right? Other thing I also want to talk about, and I was talking to a couple of students, right? Especially CS students, all of them are facing a big dilemma, right? A lot of code is being generated by AI, right? In fact, there are a couple of startups that I've been engaged with or mentoring, right? Where one try we are doing is, can we actually have a solopreneur, right? A single person who comes with an idea, right? And is able to deploy things without requiring any additional engineers to be hired, right? Short answer is it can be done. It is very hard to do, right? And it goes back to this, unless you do the basis right, unless you have the right person thinking about how to structure it correctly, it becomes untenable, unmaintainable, and debuggable very, very quickly. So I think those are the things that going back to basics is very, very important, right? Even for the students that I was talking to, like focus on the fundamentals. Fundamentals don't go away. If anything, the need for them becomes more and more stronger as you progress, right? As you get into a world where it's more dynamic and things are more or less predictable than they were before.
Actually, yeah. So to add on to that, that's a very good point about the fundamentals. So I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics, theoretical mathematics. I obtained that before LLMs boomed in popularity. And at the time I was thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to use this for? But then, when you start to get exposed to deep learning and machine learning, those fundamentals of real analysis, the fundamentals of complex analysis, all start to make sense, right? And basic computer science principles will never change, right? That is the most future-proof part of LLM development as a whole, right? The principles. So I think, focusing on the fundamentals, maybe not necessarily the job or the tool of coding, right? That's a part of labor that can be, reduced, but at least the perception and understanding of what's being generated, what's the expected output, and how is this supposed to look, right? That all comes from theoretical knowledge, and couldn't agree more with that. So
Talk about the future proof. I also look at this problem from a people aspect. That is, no matter which domain or enterprise areas you are working on, it will be dynamically changed quickly in the next few years. So technical-wise, budget-wise, capital-wise, you cannot really be fully prepared for the future. You don't know what will be changed, how it will be changed. But people will not be changed. It still will be the people driving the business. So, but people, you may need new people, different type of people, at least the different kind of mindset of the people to drive your business. That's why for old companies, I would suggest them to hire some CS background people, especially a fresh graduate. They are really the new generation of people with AI native. They have the AI mindset inside. They are not just learning something new. They have the AI mindset, which could help you understand the problem different angles. So really, people is the key.
Okay. So actually, that was going to be the second question, which is future-proofing one's career, right? So we have a couple of young people, maybe more than a couple, that are kind of embarking on the professional journey or even the college journey. So, what fields do you think one shouldn't pursue that we were encouraging kids to pursue 5 years ago? Obviously, it sounds like fundamental math is good, right? What's going to be redundant or what already is redundant? That was...
Yeah, I think one thing is becoming very obvious is that knowing the fundamentals as is given, that is always very important. But just knowing this coding part is not going to be enough. What the upcoming generation needs to bring on the table from the day one is systematic thinking that they can translate to the agent to produce the desired outcome. Coding is implementation is given now. It's cloud code can churn the code like left and right. It can look at the legacy system and can tell you that there are 5 memory leaks within less than 5 minutes, which you will take days to identify. It can write the PR just like that, but you need to guide, and for that guiding right now comes from the experience. But whereas when the new blood is entering in the industry, they need to bring that from day one. So having that understanding how the architecture is there, and you can translate those to the instructions very precisely, crisply to the agent, and that is going to be the key. So that's my take.
Plus one to what you heard from both Mayan and Sharat, right? Only additional thing I want folks who are either in college or just getting out, right, to think about is, think about in past, right, we would always talk about people who are experts or, in a vertical domain, right? They knew everything about a domain, say like healthcare or automotive or aerospace, right? Those who are vertical domains. Then you had professionals who are horizontal, right? Hey, I'm a database expert. I'm expert at core sciences and biology, right? That is the world that we used to live in, right? Right now, the most successful folks are going to be who can cross that and what we will call as a deep professional, right? Where you have a deep expertise in one domain, right? Where you can go vertical, but at the same time, you have enough cross skills where you can do multiple functions together so that, it's more effective. So simple example, since we were talking about code generation, right? A solopreneur who can be really successful, or even a new employee in a big company who will be very successful, is someone who understands the basis of software architecture, a solid one, right? Understands use cases and customer requirements, right? And is able to define those and is able to tie it back to business metrics, right? And being able to do all three of them is the key that I'm talking about. Yet you may have expertise in only one of them in terms of your vertical expertise, right? So something to think about, right? I do think we are no longer in the world where you can just have a horizontal or vertical capability and be super successful. So something to think about.
I totally agree with that. In fact, because I be with a big company as well. Well, I be asked by many parents what the major my kids should go to. In fact, I found at our age we have a lot of kids at college and going to college, right? So that's a tough question. In fact, for nowadays, not only the fresh graduates could hardly find a good job, but also the FTEs, the current people working may lose their job pretty soon. In fact, my prediction is in the next 2-3 years, there will be mass layoff all across the board, not only from IT companies, it will be everywhere. The society will be in chaos. So I'm fully prepared for that. Not a big, but different ways. But yeah, but talking about the major to select, I totally agree. For the future, the people we need is not one single vertical domain. They need to be across the domains. They have a mixed background and they may want to work on different things combined together. But one key skill they need to know is how to better use the AI to help them. Everything in the future will be AI assisted. So no matter where you are, who you are, or what you do, you will use AI. So how to better use AI will make you outstanding than other people. So that's my answer.
Yeah. I completely echo all those thoughts. Someone who's been in education for the last 6 years, and is thankfully out of it for now. I can say this. One thing is that, I think a lot of the education you have in school can give you very good theoretical knowledge if you focus on the theory rather than the coding side. I think focusing on the theory is very valuable. But one thing that, any person in college should be, actively learning on their own, because, trust me, school's not going to provide this, is understanding the application of AI, right? That's essentially, dotting your I's, crossing your T's right there, right? You can build a fantastic AI model that, meets all these or succeeds all the other models on benchmarks, is highly performative on an analytical scale, but you got to ask the question, what can this be used for? Where can it be used? There's no, if you don't have a purpose for what you're creating that's so powerful, I don't think it's, I don't think that's a good use of your time. And understanding where, hey, maybe this is a new application of AI. This is an area where this new technology has not been present. I can capitalize on that. I can customize an AI model for that use case. I think that's super valuable, and I think
that actually connects with another question we had, which is, I guess also going back to the original theme, what comes after LLMs, or what else is there or is needed. So are there specific application areas or verticals that look more exciting or more open, or what do you call, more ready for leveraging future models, right, beyond LLMs? If that question makes sense, right? Healthcare, autonomous vehicles, or manufacturing, airlines, whatever you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working quite a bit in, the autonomous driving domain. That is certainly like a very, widely applicable field of, world models, of world action models. I think that's a perfect application of it. But there still is the question that you can apply to any field. Hey, this model is too big. I need to fit it on something cheaper that I can put in every car, right? That's the real question. And that's more of a theoretical question, to be honest, rather than an application-based side. But that's a highly relevant field, I would say, that beyond LLMs.
Do you think this would enable vehicles or drones or things that we today perceive to be impossible or hard to do, if you had these much more efficient models that could be deployed in devices?
I think it can. I think it can, fill in the gaps of the deficiencies of existing solutions. Now, it's hard to say that it can fully solve a problem. I think that's a little difficult to project. But certainly fill deficiencies of existing solutions.
Same question, Shard. What applications areas are exciting and promising?
I've been in, around AI and with the real customers for almost like 7-ish years now. I don't think so. Before we think about the future, the new area where the AI can enter, I don't think so the existing common area around us have really truly, realized the potential of AI yet. Like, for example, being in AWS, I was part of Amazon Connect, which is contact center in cloud, whereas most of the customer in different industries, being a travel, financial industries, everyone is looking for how to apply AI so that, the most of the customer service can be more effective and faster to the customer and can be more personalized. And then there was a wave came that a lot of IVR and, conversational AI came into the picture. Then we hit with another, roadblock of these AIs are very robotic. It can be equal to the human, because one thing that human bring in conversation is sentiment. Then the industry start evolving towards customer support. Industry start evolving towards we need to have IVR, but same time they should be sentiment aware in the conversation. Like if I am frustrated, the response should not be very robotic. Like, yes, I can do it. Yes, I cannot do it. It should add some sentiment. Sorry to hear that, and thank you for the appreciation and whatnot. It's still, all those industry haven't truly, realized the value. Like I would say that, like in customer support itself, if I look at the data around, no one have achieved yet, maybe more than 20% or 30% of success rate with AI yet in customer support across the board. So the huge potential over there where the value can be realized. But, going forward, I truly believe that there are many industries are untouched. And the reason for that is that there are great models out there in the labs right now. And the term I use for that, and those models are sitting there. Nobody is thinking about, bringing those to industry. I say that like that term is I call it, model overhung. The model is sitting there and it's like they're very powerful, maybe in a, for manufacturing, maybe for the healthcare, but there is a push required to bring them in industry, and so that those can be used more broadly. Whereas the other problem is going on in industry is that many enterprises are stuck in pilot. They are not able to graduate out of the pilot, and the both side of the problems are there. That once leaders recognize the right way to get out of the pilot is to make sure that we build the right guardrail, we fix our platform data schema, and have the right semantic, and have a confidence in pushing the models or the AI agents to the production. That way they will be quickly moving to the next phase. So similarly, bringing the new models will create a more space in the industry so that customers and enterprises can think of experimenting for next set of things.
Got it. So you're saying there's a lot of opportunity still, even if you don't have any new technology, just applying what we already have. I see. So Gio, we talked about this, I guess, a couple of days back, right? Well, I guess it's related to what Shard mentioned, that going from POC into production, and I don't know, 90% of people are kind of stuck, right? Yep. Because compliance and risk and all that goes through the roof. So your thoughts on maybe future application areas, but also what's
I'll
now?
touch on this first and then go to the future applications. I do believe, or at least from my vantage point, what I've seen is more than 95%, maybe even as high as 98, 99% of use cases, they show huge results or very great gains, right, when you do a POC. And then when you try to put in production, things just fall on the space, right? Very, very few use cases go in production. This goes back to a challenge I want to introduce first, and that will also tie into how future will develop, right, for AI, at least in my view. I think economics of AI today is completely lopsided, right? Let's take one of the, say, Llama models that you start training. It takes months, right? It takes crazy amount of GPUs. Going to put just a very brief estimate, somewhere in hundreds of millions of dollars spent on training a new model, right? Shelf life of that model to be the SOTA or state of the art is, in the best case scenario, few weeks, right? That doesn't give you enough opportunity to capitalize for any company to go and do that, right? And that is definitely one big challenge. The other one, I think Mayan already addressed, right? To access these models today, you have to hit a cloud. Well, there are multiple hops, right? Especially in networking, right? Where it may not be feasible. The power required or compute required to compute or do an inference is almost same, equivalent to what is required for training on a single tuple, right? That economics has to change too. So I do want to talk about those, right? But going back to why are so many projects stuck in pilot phase or they never make it to production? It truly comes down to few fundamentals, right? One is, when you are doing your pilot, are you putting it in a place where it's a real life scenario rather than a reconstrained environment, right? Second part is do you even have the data to actually pull it off on a large scale, right? And that's a fundamental question many companies don't start out with, right? They look at it and say, hey, if I can summarize a resume, that's great. Now I have a better summarized resume for all my candidates. Great, but what does it fit into, right? How does it play in the overall ecosystem? That's very, very critical. So I think that is a fundamental thing that needs to happen. I think AI needs to mimic human behavior and not the other way. I think we have put the cart in front of the horse to some extent, right? Where we talk about LLM and we talk about tokenization. Why should a business care about it? They shouldn't, right? And that is where I think the fundamental
shift has to happen before we'll see the mass adoption, right?
Yeah, I would like to add few things. Is that this is a very critical point that soon, as we all are leaders sitting here, and there are many more leaders over there, I believe we will lose the right to consume all the energy, all the resources behind these LLM training if we are not able to produce the right utility of it. So I always believe the trust with LLM is not limited to just security. The trust, the other aspect of is utility. So we need to continuously think about like how we can bring the right outcomes and the utility out of LLM. Otherwise, soon, all these resources, all these rights we have right now to use GPU, energy, and so much of, resources behind it, we will lose soon. That's how I see the 2030.
No pressure. Yes, again, and now it's switching back to the question of how do I see the future? I think future is bright, right? 2030, and I'll go back to historical patterns, right? I do think like what computer did, what internet did, right? AI is going to be no different. It's going to be personal. It's going to be small. Right now, it requires massive clouds and servers to run. It will fit in your palm, right? It will fit in your mobile devices, and it will be very, very useful, right? We will go through hard phases, as Tiger was mentioning, right? I also expect within next few years, humanity will have to adjust to how AI is evolving and vice versa. But at the same time, I do believe, say, given a course of time, 5 years or so, it's actually going to be a better world, right? It's no different than any other technology, right? When computers came in, a lot of people who didn't know typing, didn't know how to use computers. Well, they had to retool, right? And we will go through a similar transformation as humanity in next few years for sure. And yes, is it going to be smooth? No. It's going to have its bump, but I do see the light at the end of the tunnel on this, and it's a very positive one. So,
Excellent. Tiger, your thought?
In fact, I look at the large language model a little bit different. A lot of people think large language model is a pretty new thing. It's going to change everything. In fact, if you look back about 30 years, you see there are multiple waves of innovations in the past. And the large language model may be the smallest wave in the past. We have experienced the mobile change. We have experienced the cloud computing, big data eras. So there are even bigger changes. So if you look at the large language model, realistic, it did not create any new business opportunities or new user scenarios. All the current application, I would say, is already been there. So there's nothing new is created. That's the problem. As I mentioned, the mass layoff, right? Why there's a mass layoff? This wave of AI innovation is so fast, so impactful. The efficiency gain is so great, never happened in human history in the past. Well, at the same time, it did not create any new opportunity to absorb the efficiency lost or efficiency gain from other domains. So I'm pretty sure there will be a mass layoff around all across the board. But at the same time, you can see a large language model really drive up a revenue really beneficial for some domains, but not all for the older use cases. For example, for the chip business, really is driving up the chip or hardware business a lot all across the industry. And also for search ads and also recommendation related stuff. It's really driving up the business like billions of dollars or tens of billions of dollars more every year. For example, for Meta, for Google, for TikTok, for other companies. That's why I think Ron's business working on the search AI really have potential, right? So three really major domain I saw in the past 2 years really been beneficial from the large language model, the search ads, and also a recommendation related stuff.
Thank you. We're probably going to run out of questions, and I want audience to have time. I have one question. We've kind of touched on it, right? Which is training is very expensive. A large model training is super expensive, right? And then inference is everywhere. It needs to be everywhere, obviously. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy. Sometimes it's mentioned or thought about with training and inference, right? But it seems, especially with world models, that you will need devices or solutions that can do both right? Because when I'm walking around in real world, that should all be going to training of some sort, right? And then when I need it to infer something, it should infer something for me based on what it's learned, from whatever large content sets as well as my own visual world, I suppose. So where do we get to the state where this dichotomy goes away, right? Inference and training, and it's constantly happening all the time, right? And this goes like to Jigar, to your point, which is it shouldn't matter to the end users, right? Whether it's LLMs or what GPU, whatever, right? So when do we get to that higher level of abstraction where most of the people, maybe even in this room, would be abstracted from some of these details?
No, that's, I think there are two questions over there. In terms of capability, right? So let's take RAG as an example, right? Where you have context, which is kept, right? And it retrieves the results or enriches the results based on that, right? Some of that exists today. The architecture hasn't evolved where it can be super dynamic, right? It still requires a batch upload for certain aspects, right? And I think that needs to change. I do think there also needs to be hardware innovation that needs to come in. We plugged AI training on computer graphics or GPU. GPUs were not designed for AI training from start, right? They were designed for accessing large visual content, right? And creating that in a way where it can be processed very quickly. A simple example in mathematics, it is all about matrix multiplication, right? Do you require matrix multiplication for AI? To some extent, yes, but it's a very sparse metric, right? So there has to be innovation in that front, right? There has to be innovation on fundamentally how you process a single tuple for training and inference. Couple of ways I can see this evolving. One is they may completely diverge, right? In a way where inferences is so fast that it becomes very, very quick for you versus training becomes slower. Other thing you bring up is like, can we be in a world where it's continuously training and learning, right? I do think yes, but it might be a hybrid world for us, at least in the 5-year horizon, before we can get to this ubiquitous world of continuous training, right? And what I mean by hybrid world is your context is captured and your context supersedes the results that are presented to you even more than the world model, right? And this goes back to some of the things that Ron was also mentioning, right? Your results that you get back, how can you infer them, right? How can you actually interject and change them on the fly? What can you do so that, there are elements of it which will surface? Because let's say you and I had this conversation around AI and few days back, right? And yesterday, if you're looking around AI, could those results be relevant, saying, hey, why is this not going beyond to our prototypes, right? Or our pilots, right? And what can be done better for that? AI hasn't evolved there, right? I think search has evolved a little bit, but I think similar innovation needs to happen. And I think the bigger bottleneck is going to be hardware innovation, right? Where you need to fundamentally change how the hardware is designed for the compute that is required, rather than force fitting a compute on the existing hardware that's there.
So I have a a different flavor of understanding and the way we should solve this. There are two parts when it comes to the LLM. One is model provider, and other one are model users. In enterprise world, all the large company provide the model and services in the cloud, and all the enterprises, access those models and to deliver the functionality using agents, AI agents, or search or whatever. So building a model general purpose that works for all the enterprises, impossible. It's not possible. You cannot have a model that work for airline industry, that works for financial industry, healthcare industry, and everywhere for their domain specific capabilities. And that the multiple models came in picture. Okay, this model is good for the coding. If you want to tune to the code, this model is very good for computer vision and whatnot. But within a similar industry, like for example banking, the way one bank or one financial institute works, it's not necessary the another one will work the same way. So while I totally agree with what Jigar said about the the evolution that is needed, but that is needed more from the company, those are provider. But the one evolution is needed at the enterprise level is the understanding and this awareness that the model I got is not going to solve my problem. There is a responsibility I also have to tell model what my business is through the semantic layer, and I need to have a guardrails, that observability that tells me how this model is serving my employees when they query this model for any specific thing. So having that guardrail, transparency, and also the companies have to provide the reinforcement learning as well, and model get better and better as we use more and more in a specific way. So that is another thing that has to happen. Company, those are the provider for the models. They need to continuously evolve in that field, but at the same time, those are the consumer. They need to also evolve their thinking, their awareness. Right now is a heavy lifting done by the external companies or IT consultant to come in. Can you make this model work for us? The same time, the companies have to provide the tools and such observability that the enterprises can be self-serve.
We don't mind, by the way. So, Tiger, your thoughts on?
Sorry, what's the question again?
There's a dichotomy between training and inference, right? Just to summarize the question, right? So, can you get to a paradigm of compute or technology where that goes away and there's continuous training on maybe edge devices or whatever people have with them, or enterprises have in their enterprises, factories, offices, what they have? So,
in fact, the continuous training is not a new thing, right? For all the in the past 30 years, for all the AI models, you have to retrain the model to catch up with your new data or your new need. So there's nothing new here. But the thing new for the large language model retraining is really the cost is so high, and also it needs a special expertise to efficiently retrain or fine tune the model, and it also requires a lot of well labeled golden data to train it. And the labeling cost is huge because most of them are multimodal, but not just the text-based. In fact, for companies like Meta or other Microsoft, they are spending billions of dollars on just labeling the data. So think about that scale. So it's not easy for a small company. So really, your company has a business over there to help the customers do that. But really, I want to have a word on that compliance. Both of them, I think, mentioned that compliance is very important for the AI models, not only for large language model, but for the AI models. It's better for the large language model nowadays. It's not so explainable, the result. So the challenge of compliance over the legal consideration is much higher than before. You cannot explain. They give you an answer. You do not know how or why they give you that answer. So that really is horrible in some sense, and also is meaningful in some sense. And of course, different local government and federal governments, they have different laws against that, but no mature laws or really systematically solve this problem. So if anybody have kids going to law school, I think that's a good direction.
Plus one to what you mentioned, right? Just wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was, helping out Bellevue City Council, right, on something, and one topic came up is they wanted to introduce their own AI laws, and I was like, please don't do that, right? There are just too many of them. Can we take a ISO standard or one of the existing standards on this, right, and just use that, right? You don't want a specific law for every jurisdiction you cross. That just adds to the burden of AI and AI cost and hurdle for adoption for sure.
So since you haven't gone very quick, then we're going to give it to the audience.
Yeah. So I think there needs to be some form of synergy between the hardware providers, hardware manufacturers, and the model builders. There needs to be some understanding of model builders. Hey, this specific part of a piece of hardware I can dedicate for training, right, in real time. And then there's another part of the hardware. Hey, this is the inference segment, if you will. I think there needs to be very close collaboration. Because if we're working on developing models, building models for hardware that we know is going to remain constant and doesn't actually have our best interest in mind, right? Which is inference and training. We're not going to be fully utilizing the potential of models moving forward. So,
Thank you. So, just a little bit of logistics. The food, I think there's still some food. The bar's still open. We should have it for at least a good half an hour more. But we'll do some Q&A now, but hopefully everybody will be able to stay around after that for any individual follow-ups. So I'm going to try to keep it fast. But so Wei Ling always goes first. Okay, that's a tradition.
Thank you. I enjoy your talk. You guys mentioned about fundamentals, future proof. For just from my understanding, LLMs provide answers based on pre-trained data, or maybe even fine-tuning with specific data set. But LLMs don't really understand the fundamentals. They provide answers based on pattern recognition, right? If some problem has already been solved, they give the answer.
So willing, and I would add one more challenge, right? LLM doesn't know when not to answer. So it will always tell you what is the next character in the sequence, irrespective of what the confidence interval it has, right? So that makes it even more harder, right? It's not just that it can only tell you what it has seen in past, but sometimes it may have not seen or it's not confident on it. It still make that assertion, right?
Right. So it provides like pattern recognition type of answers, but not logical answers, since it doesn't have understanding of fundamentals. So what would be the future for like beyond LLMs? How can you solve what currently unsolved problems?
I'll go, Mike. Yeah. The one thing that I think I'll repeat, there are two aspects. The model providers, they're definitely always looking for this model is for specific domain or industry. And the way model graduate and come out to available for the consumer after a lot of training on that field. And, one more thing is for training, you need data. And data is in the two categories, synthetic data and actual data. So both areas is a very big industry right now. You should think about it, this business. So the synthetic data production is also not easy. You cannot just say like randomly generate this record and train my model on that and run eval and see whether what's the success rate is. The second is the actual data. There are two ways to use the actual data. One is people are donating their data right now. People are saying, I'm willing to redact my data and donate you, use that to train your model. The other way is the reinforcement learning that we have said. And the final thing that I think I will repeat is the responsibility of the consumer to say that I understand I am going to use this model, for my particular domain, for particular task, to translate the business logic, to translate the rules and regulations, those and guardrails I have. I will build my semantic layer and I will put that semantic layer on top of model before a query, enter, or result come out of it. So that model understand like in which context someone is asking me the question. So that the other way is that you say like, I'm going to host my own model. I'm going to train. If you can afford, then you can train model for yourself. So per customer model is also another thing happening. But if we expect that model should automatically understand wide variety of business semantics, is going to be tough because there are many enterprises those have built their systems in very old days, that schema, that information all sitting there from multi years.
Other questions? Go ahead, Hershey.
For sure, I have seen a couple of examples of what you're talking about, digital twins. NVIDIA is one platform. There were a couple of others we would partner with. It was very, very useful in industrial and manufacturing settings, right? Where you could predict what the defect rate would be, right? Or where the failure or choke points are. Seen very good applications of it. Again, going back to what Weiling's question was kind of inferring, these are very good at certain specific domains. They don't generalize, right? And knowing what domains it'll work is going to be very, very critical, right? And that's something that both you have to continuously test and evolve, right? And at the same time, there is a world where things like physics is not truly understood by digital twins today, right? And once that comes in, right, there will be a lot more additional applications where you could kind of start applying AI in a digital twin setup, right, where it will make sense. So,
I guess more questions. Oh, there's Ash. But he's putting the model on the device, right? The entire large language model. That's the
they should set on a call handheld device, it can be smaller. Like or device.
Okay, based on my understanding of the tree, a large language model should not be run on the handheld device. Because there's no really mobile chip support that by. Yeah, and also memory is also sent on the other.
Well, today's a lucky, right? But there's not
maybe this is a good offline one.
Yeah, no, I think just to quickly address, right, there are ways today where you can take a very large model, right, and try to distill it in a much more smaller models, and you can run the distilled version. It gives you approximately same result. It is not exactly the same model per se. So something to think about. But is distillation real? Yes. Are there applications that it has enabled today? For sure, right? And there is a lot more work to be done, right? Again, the same issue you have with. That's also there. By the way, if you can do it, we all will love it, right?
We'll
In fact,
take it.
the running a large language model on the edge devices on the news, in fact, it has been there for about 2 years. But basically, it means different things. Like one thing is you can distill the large language model, still call it a large language model. You can do a quantization and other ways to reduce the size of the model. In fact, from a 70B model, you can just easily make it a few hundred megabytes and just make it running on the mobile phone easily. But the performance or the accuracy, for example, may be quite different. It may be similar for some use cases, but generally speaking, if you talk about general usage of large language model, it will be sacrifice a lot if you reduce the size. And so far, based on my understanding, there's no hardware support really on, for example, cell phone could support that. Even on a Tesla car, they do not have that kind of a mobile AI chip to support that. NVIDIA tried hard to make it happen, but not yet. DeepSeek is still DeepSeek is still large model. You can do distillation or quantization, make it smaller. The raw one, no. even bigger. Gemini Slash is smaller but still big. Still big. You can run even. I tried to benchmark it. Even run it on the data center devices. The QPS is horrible. You have to do something to.
Yeah, short answer is you can dump it, right? And it will work, but it may give you a result after 3 hours once you ask a question, right? And imagine requerying, right? And that is where is it practical? It is not practical today, at least not that we have seen, or at least I have seen, right? So just want to call that out.
Go ahead, Mine. You've been looking at this kind of stuff anyway, right?
Yeah. So, one area of, exploration that's been really hot has been quantization, right? And, there are different encoding formats that are optimal on different GPUs. And the short answer is that from the benchmarks we've seen, again, benchmarks, I don't think you can practically apply the results to the real world, but, to get an idea of the performance, it doesn't scale very poorly, or it doesn't scale very well to lower precision, or quantized models don't scale to the full version of the models. So
Other questions? Any questions on applications? Talk a little bit about applications. No. Any thoughts? Even if you don't have a question.
How about let's ask a question to the audience. What do you think the large language model will have impact on your domain or on your business? Any answers? Go ahead. Medical areas really a very hard problem for the AI. Yeah. Yes.
So, thank you, everyone. I've been using large language model. I work in training and a development area. Some talent acquisition. Some of our large clients using us for unique ways for talent acquisition. And what we have seen was amazing. It's transformative. There are ways, the talent selection in executive and management level used to be a myth, black box. We had 80% accuracy to predict who will be selected. It could never achieve that without large language models. So I think beyond chat, there are so many good ways of using models. Our imagination is the only barrier. There are so many good things you can do with it, even with the current model. They're so powerful. I think the application layer, every industry can see big transformation just from my own experience. Yeah.
Sean.
So yeah, I work in healthcare and we support social care, including in rural areas. And we're an applied system. We have like an AI orchestration layer over a bunch of models. And we actually have an offline use in rural healthcare. A lot of rural areas don't have internet. So we have essentially care workers or case managers that go out to rural areas, and we equip the device with very small LLM models. But for targeted, very specific things, it's helping them navigate very specific 23,000 care pathways that they could never remember as a human being. And they could never navigate those as a human being. But that is 100% a great use of their time and allows them to serve 4 to 8 times as many people more effectively. So yes, it's a small model, but it's a huge leap for those individuals. And our accuracy on that is 98% tested against experts. So it is completely possible to game change certain areas for targeted approaches. And I look for the day when we have on-site hardware, but we have a lot of progress we can make really fast.
Yep. Plus one to what you said, right? My own experience has been similar. If you can train expert models for specific tasks or domains, right, they work much better than going with generic models, right? It's like even for us as humans, right? There are smart people, you want to ask them many questions, but if you are really sick, you want to talk to a doctor, right? And not just the smartest guy in the room, right? So something definitely worth calling out for sure.
Just a quick thing adding on to that is the success of generative AI in your domain is highly dependent on the quality of data that you have. And how can that quality data be accessed? I think, we discussed earlier about physics and the laws of physics, right? And how difficult it is to represent that in data form, right? So naturally, for, physics-based applications in real time, LLMs are quite poor at that. So, it's highly dependent on the field where, you can actually access quality data. And if you can't access quality data, well, then that's your first step is, how can you make it meaningful?
I'll just add one point. Tiger, thank you for that question. And I think one area that I personally have experienced, right, just over the last year or so, I think LLM, especially the pro version, right, with the very competent reasoning capability, has transformed how we engage consulting projects. So from summarizing a workshop, to even statement work, project summary, it's actually super efficient these days. So I think you all probably read an article that they're going after McKinsey's and the BCGs of the world, right? ChatGPT made a statement a few months ago, and I actually, after I saw that article, I did the subscription to the pro model, and it has actually transformed our the way that we engage with clients.
Yeah, one last point I will add that, I think if we look around across the board, we will find that a lot of research is done on handling the unstructured data, taking a documents, taking a raw data, making sense out of it, creating a summary out of it, and summarization, transcript, all unstructured data, taking documents and whatnot, and make sense out of it. There's a lot to be done in the structured data, or a lot to be done how we can convert unstructured to structure, how we can make sense out of a data that is stored in SQL, serve in an agentic fashion, which can answer my agentic questions, where I'm asking a natural language question, but the answers are coming from the database. So that is another field that is evolving very fast, where the models have to understand, with the help of course, semantic layer, that how these questions can be answered very well with out of database.
Is that all? I guess that does it. Thank you so much. So, yeah, everybody's very busy.
How about let's take a picture together?
Yeah, we'll take a picture.
No.
Thanks to the audience, by the way, just very quickly, we do these about once a quarter, so there should be another one in a few months. And but thanks to all of you for making it tonight. And then again, thanks to our panel.